standing at the back of my own funeral. 20 feet away, my casket's wide open. My wife, Sarah, is sobbing into her hands. My brother, Mike, has his arm around her. The whole crowd's dressed in black, sniffling, wiping their eyes. And me? I'm just watching. Because 3 days ago, I paid a guy $10,000 to make it look like I died in a car wreck. The cops bought it. The news bought it. My family, they definitely bought it. I didn't do this for revenge. I didn't do it for money. I just wanted to know, if I was gone, who would actually care? Turns out I got my answer faster than I thought. Because right there, in the middle of my funeral, while the preacher was talking about what a loving husband I was, Sarah checked her phone, and she smiled. That's when I knew I'd made a mistake, not faking my death. No, the mistake was thinking I knew the people I loved at all. 2 months before the funeral, my life looked perfect. On paper, at least. Sarah and I had been married 12 years. We owned a nice house in Charlotte, 2 cars, no kids by choice. I ran a construction business that did well enough to keep us comfortable. Not rich, but we never worried about money. Sarah worked part-time at a dental office, mostly for something to do. We had friends. We took vacations. From the outside, it was exactly the kind of life people pretend to want. My brother Mike lived 20 minutes away. We weren't super close, but we got along. He'd come over for football Sundays, drink my beer, complain about his job. Normal brother stuff. My parents were still in Ohio, but we called every couple weeks. Nothing dramatic, no big fights, just life. Then last November, things got weird. Sarah started staying late at work, said the dentist needed help catching up on paperwork. She'd come home at 8, 9 o'clock, always tired, always shrugging off questions. I didn't push, figured she needed space. Then my tools started going missing from the garage. Nothing major. A drill here, a saw there. I blamed it on the crew, figured someone was borrowing stuff without asking. Then one night I came home early from a job. Sarah's car wasn't in the driveway. I called her phone, straight to voicemail. I sat on the couch, waited. An hour later, her headlights swept through the window. She walked in, saw me, froze for half a second. Traffic was awful, she said, but her office was 12 minutes away. And that's when I noticed. Her shoes were muddy, like she'd been somewhere with dirt roads. Somewhere my brother Mike liked to go fishing. I didn't say anything, just nodded. Because that's the thing about trust. Once you start looking for cracks, you find them everywhere. It took me 3 weeks to figure out how to disappear. I couldn't just leave. That would have been too easy. I needed proof. I needed to see what they'd do when they thought I was gone for good. So I started asking around. The kind of questions you only ask in bars at 2 a.m. when the right kind of wrong people are still drinking. That's how I met Roy, ex-EMT, fired for stealing morphine. Now he worked part-time at the county morgue. For $8,000 cash, he said he could make a body disappear. For $2,000 more, he'd filed the paperwork to match. We met in a Walmart parking lot. He showed me photos of car wrecks until I picked one that looked enough like me. Dark hair, same build. "Give me your wallet, your phone, and a shirt you've worn recently," he said. "The rest is chemistry." 2 days later, my truck went off Route 27 near the state line. No skid marks, no brake lights, just a set of tire tracks leading straight into the ravine. The cops found the wreck upside down in the creek. They found my phone in the mud, screen cracked. They found pieces of a flannel shirt caught on the branches, and they found blood. Enough to test, enough to confirm, enough to close the case. The local news ran the story for a day. Local businessman dies in single car accident. Sarah identified the body. My brother picked out the casket. My mother picked the hymns for the funeral. And me? I checked into a motel 30 miles away, under a name no one would recognize, and waited to see what happened next. I didn't have to wait long. 3 days after they buried me, they all gathered in my lawyer's office. Sarah wore the same black dress from the funeral. My brother Mark sat beside her, arm around her shoulders. My parents took chairs in the corner, looking exhausted. The room smelled like coffee and expensive leather. My attorney, Jeff Reynolds, cleared his throat and opened the folder. "As per David's last will and testament," he said, "everything goes to his wife, Sarah. The house, the business, all bank accounts and investments." Sarah nodded like she expected this. Mark squeezed her hand. Then Jeff adjusted his glasses. "There is, however, one condition." The room got very still. Jeff kept reading. "If Sarah remarries within 12 months of my death, all assets immediately transfer to the Charlotte Children's Hospital." Sarah's face went white. Mark's grip on her hand tightened. "Additionally," Jeff continued, "my brother Mark will receive nothing, under any circumstances." Mark stood up so fast his chair fell over. "That's bullshit," he shouted. Sarah just stared at the papers in front of her. My mother started crying. My father put his head in his hands. Jeff stayed calm. "The will is airtight," he said. "David had it updated 3 weeks ago. He was very clear." He slid a copy across the table. Sarah's hands shook as she picked it up. I know because I was watching from the parking lot, through a telephoto lens, as she realized her mistake. She thought she'd won. She thought it was over. But I'd been planning longer than she knew. The woman from the funeral took me 3 days to find. I started with the guest book at the service. Fake name, fake number. But people leave trails, especially when they don't think anyone's looking. I remembered the way she placed that rose on my casket, not like a stranger, like someone who knew exactly what they were doing. The security cameras at the funeral home caught her license plate. A 2017 Honda Accord, Ohio tags. That's all I needed. Her name was Elena Rodriguez, 28 years old, worked as a paralegal in Columbus. Normal life stuff. I waited until she was inside before approaching. When she opened the door, she didn't look surprised, just tired. "I wondered when you'd show up," she said, like she'd been expecting me. She let me in without asking who I was. Her place smelled like lavender and takeout. Photos of her and Mark still on the bookshelf. I didn't have to ask many questions. Elena talked while she unpacked groceries. "Mark paid me $5,000 to flirt with you at that bar last spring," she said. "Sarah needed proof you were cheating, for the divorce. She put the milk in the fridge. Except you never took the bait, so they went with Plan B." Plan B, that's what she called it, like it was some business strategy. Not my life, not my marriage, just another problem to solve. Elena handed me a manila envelope from her kitchen drawer. "I kept copies," she said. "Emails, texts, the fake dating profile they made in your name." She wouldn't look at me. "I tried to warn you, sent flowers to the funeral, figured you'd be watching." I sat there holding that envelope, listening to her dishwasher run, realizing how long this had been going on, how many moves ahead they'd planned, and how badly they wanted me gone. My mother lived in the same house I grew up in, same flower boxes under the windows, same welcome mat that said, "Bless this home." I parked down the street and watched through the curtains as she moved around the kitchen, making tea, checking her phone, normal mom stuff. I used my key. The lock still turned the same way. The house smelled like it always did. Laundry detergent and that vanilla candle she burned year-round. She didn't scream when she saw me, didn't even drop her teacup, just set it down carefully on the counter and said, "I wondered how long it would take you." We sat at the kitchen table where I'd done homework as a kid. She didn't ask how I was alive, didn't ask where I'd been, just folded her hands and waited. I laid out the proof from Elena's envelope, the emails between her and Sarah, the bank transfers to Roy, the coroner, the screenshots of messages planning my accident. My mother scanned them like she was reviewing a grocery list. "Mark was always your father's favorite," she said finally. "But you were smarter. Built that business from nothing. Bought that nice house." She traced the rim of her teacup. "When Sarah came to us last year saying you were cheating, Your father believed her immediately. I knew better. The clock on the wall ticked. The refrigerator kicked on. Somewhere outside, a dog barked. Then why? I asked. She met my eyes for the first time. Because Mark needed it. His debts. That gambling problem. The loan sharks were getting impatient. She shrugged. Sarah promised to take care of him. All we had to do was play along. I stared at this woman who'd packed my school lunches, who'd kissed my scraped knees, who'd sat in the front row at my wedding, and realized I'd never known her at all. She reached across the table and patted my hand. You always land on your feet, David. Mark never could. Like that explained everything. Like that made it okay. I left the house keys on the table when I walked out. Didn't bother closing the door behind me. They held the memorial dinner at Sullivan's Steakhouse. Sarah reserved the private room in the back. White tablecloths, candles, a big photo of me near the entrance. I watched through the window as they all arrived. Sarah in a black dress, Mark in his one good suit, my parents looking tired, some cousins from out of town, a few friends from college who didn't know any better. I waited until the salads were served, until the wine started flowing, until Sarah stood up to give her speech about what a wonderful husband I'd been. That's when I walked in. The room went silent so fast you could hear the ice melting in the water glasses. Sarah's wine glass hit the floor. Mark knocked over his chair, backing away. My mother actually crossed herself. I didn't yell, didn't make a scene, just pulled out the empty chair at the head of the table, my chair, and sat down. Sorry I'm late, I said. Traffic was hell. Sarah made a sound like a deflating balloon. Mark's face turned the color of bad milk. My father just stared at his hands. I set my phone on the table and hit play. The security footage from my house. Sarah and Mark on the couch. The audio of my mother admitting everything. The documents from Elena. The room stayed so quiet, you could hear every word. When it finished, I looked at Sarah. The will's still valid, I said. Except now everyone knows why I wrote it that way. That's when the restaurant manager came in, followed by 2 cops. I'd stopped by earlier that afternoon, showed them my ID, explained there might be some trouble later. Sarah started screaming about how I'd set her up. Mark tried to bolt for the emergency exit. My mother just sat there, staring at me with this weird pride, like she was impressed I'd outplayed them. The cops took statements. The manager clomped the meal. And I walked out of there with every guest's phone number, witnesses for the divorce hearing, the criminal case, the civil suits that would come after. But the best part? Watching Sarah realize she'd have to pay for her own Uber home. The arrests made the evening news. Channel 7 ran the story right after the weather. Footage of Sarah being led out of her apartment in handcuffs, still wearing her bathrobe. Mark getting prep walked out of his job at the car dealership. The DA held a press conference calling it one of the most premeditated fraud cases he'd ever seen. I sat in my new apartment watching it all on a cheap flat screen. The place smelled like takeout and fresh paint. No furniture except a folding chair and an air mattress. Best home I'd ever had. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Reporters wanting comments. Old friends suddenly remembering my number. My father left 3 voicemails before I blocked him. The only call I took was from my lawyer. Sarah signed the divorce papers, he said. No contest. She also agreed to vacate the house by Friday. I could hear papers shuffling on his end. Oh, and Mark's lawyer called. They want to discuss a plea deal. I told him I'd think about it, hung up, turned off my phone. The TV was showing Sarah's mugshot now, her hair a mess. That same black dress from the funeral wrinkled and stained. The caption underneath read, "Alleged plot to fake husband's death." I changed the channel, found a baseball game. The Tigers were losing. I made a sandwich. The knife scraping against the bread was the only sound in the apartment. Later, I drove past our old house. Sarah's car was still in the driveway, but the curtains were drawn. A moving truck would come tomorrow. New locks would be installed. The security system would be changed. None of that was my problem anymore. At a red light, I checked my bank balance on my phone. The business accounts were frozen during the investigation, but my personal savings were still there. Enough to start over. Enough to disappear for real this time if I wanted to. The light turned green. I kept driving, didn't look back. The knock came at 8 p.m. I wasn't expecting company. The apartment intercom hadn't buzzed. When I looked through the peephole, Elena stood there in a raincoat, hair pulled back, no makeup. She held a manila envelope against her chest like armor. I opened the door but didn't invite her in. She didn't wait for permission, just walked past me into the empty living room, her shoes leaving wet prints on the bare floor. "They dropped the charges against me," she said. "Turns out cooperating pays off." She set the envelope on the windowsill, not the same one from before, thicker, bulkier. "I thought you should see these," she said, "before the trial." Inside were ultrasound photos, 3 of them, dates going back 2 months. The last one clearly showed a tiny hand, 5 distinct fingers. Elena watched me look at them. "I'm 16 weeks," she said. "Mark doesn't know." The radiologist's stamp in the corner said Columbus General. The date was 2 days before my funeral. I shuffled through the images again. "What do you want?" I asked. Elena sat on the floor back against the wall. "Nothing from you," she said. "Just wanted you to hear it from me first. The cops will subpoena these records anyway." She rubbed her stomach absently. "I'm keeping it. Already left Ohio. Got a job in Seattle." I handed the photos back. She didn't take them. "Keep those," she said. "Might help with the custody hearing." "Custody?" Elena stood up, smoothed her raincoat. "Mark's going to prison. Sarah's looking at 5 years minimum. Your parents," she shrugged. "Somebody's gotta be the grown-up." She left without saying goodbye. The envelope stayed on the windowsill. The ultrasound images glowed in the streetlight coming through the blinds. That tiny hand, those perfect fingers. My phone buzzed. Another email from the lawyer, another decision to make. I left the photos where they were and went to make coffee. The pot was still in the box. The water took forever to boil. 6 months later, I stood in a Seattle park watching Elena push a stroller along the waterfront. The baby, a girl, wore a tiny blue hat. From 50 yards away, I could see she had Mark's nose. My nose. Our father's nose. I never approached them, just stood there as the October wind came off the sound, holding the unsigned papers from my lawyer. The ones that would have granted me visitation rights. The ones that could have tied me to this story forever. A seagull cried overhead. The baby laughed at something Elena said. I thought about my mother's words. How Mark always needed saving. How I always landed on my feet. How blood means nothing when people make their choices. The papers went into a trash can by the pier. The wind took 1 page before I could let go, sending it skittering across the pavement like a ghost from a life I didn't want anymore. I walked back to my car, started the engine. The radio was playing some old song about second chances, north or south, Canada or Mexico. The road didn't care which way I turned. The last thing I saw in the rearview mirror wasn't the park or the skyline. Just that single piece of paper, tumbling end over end toward the water, finally free. Was David right to fake his death? Comment below. Like if you didn't see the mom twist coming. Subscribe for more jaw-dropping stories.